The WNBA just released their 2024 MVP ladder. If Caitlin Clark is not on the ballot, is not in that top 5 for MVP, people are gonna lose their.
If you're a fan of basketball, either male or female, you've been hearing the name Caitlin Clark for the last 2 years. She's been dominating college basketball for 4 years, attracting record crowds and TV ratings. Clark's now a rookie, but if you know anything about ball, you know that her play is anything but rookie level. She's been playing like one of the best players in the league, especially if we look at the post-Olympic break games. But somehow, the league has left her out of MVP talks completely. Can you believe such a thing? Well, Rachel Demita can't. In a recent video, she's called out the WNBA for snubbing Caitlin out of the MVP talks. But is she right? Should Clark be in MVP talks or not? In this video, we're going to break all of that down, and trust us, the decision the WNBA made is more controversial than you think. Caitlin's rookie season is certainly one of the 5 best in league history, top 3 even. Since the league got back from the All-Star break, her team has won 14 out of 20 games, and she's been putting up 24 points and 9 assists per game. She's been shooting the lights out as well. Rookie of the Year already secured, especially since Agno Reese suffered a season-ending injury. We don't think anyone's talk about that anymore. People expected Caitlin to start playing better after the break, but few expected her to be this good.
I think she should be up for MVP. Rookie of the Year, foregone conclusion.
Not a lot of WNBA players had averages like this. On the season, her numbers are a bit lower, but not by a lot. You would think that everything Caitlin Clark done so far would get her mentioned among the best players, but no. In a recently released list of MVP candidates, you can see names like A'ja Wilson and Napheesa Collier, Sabrina Ionescu, all great players, no doubt, but then you see Clark down there in the honorable mentions and it just feels wrong. She's been arguably the best guard this season, but that isn't enough to rank her top 5. How does MVP voting in the WNBA work?
So, if you're unaware, the way that the MVP voting works is that the voters submit a list of their top 5 candidates. And then there's a point system based on the order. Obviously, if someone is selected number 1, that helps them in the overall process to possibly be the MVP, much more than if they're selected number 5 on someone's ballot. But using that logic, the WNBA put out a list of the top 5 WNBA MVP candidates.
On the official WNBA website, the list is as follows: A'ja Wilson, Napheesa Collier, Sabrina Ionescu, Breanna Stewart, Alyssa Thomas. The first choice makes sense. A'ja is basically everyone's unanimous MVP. Napheesa, who's been mentioned in the MVP conversation the entire season. Sabrina, on the other hand, while she's having a good season, isn't quite worth the 3rd place in the MVP race. Breanna is the reigning MVP, so he's getting a nod here, and Alyssa, who's also playing great this season. Caitlin Clark did end up in the honorable mentions category, but is she nothing more than an honorable mention in the WNBA?
Enough to be on the actual list, she gets an honorable mention. Clark being anywhere else but 3rd, when really you could make the argument she should be 1st or 2nd, is kind of absurd. It really is kind of absurd.
So why isn't Caitlin Clark in the MVP conversation? Is she all hype? How do her numbers match up against the competition? She's been averaging 19.5 points, 8.4 assists, and 5.7 rebounds. Furthermore, she's leading the league in assists and 3-pointers made. Clark's also top 10 in scoring, free throws made, and field goals. Not to mention that she has recorded 2 triple-doubles this season, which is a first for a WNBA rookie. Many rookies put up huge stats on bad teams. Bad teams get top picks, which is why Rookie of the Year award recipients are usually top 5 picks. In rare situations do these players turn their teams around. But this is one of those rare situations. If ever a top 6 team in the league, one of the best in the Eastern Conference, and they've just made the playoffs for the first team in what feels like ages.
Because if you take the argument of removing said player from a team, is any team falling off worse than the Fever without Clark? You could certainly make that case, because you look at their record, they've won more games this year than they did in the last 2 seasons combined. She's scoring or assisting on more points than any player ever. You put those 2 things together, that's a strong MVP.
When comparing Caitlin's stats to other MVP candidates, like A'ja Wilson and Sabrina Ionescu, the gap becomes harder to justify. A'ja Wilson may lead the pack with her dominant presence on the court, But when we take into consideration how Clark is important to her team, the distance between the two doesn't seem that far.
Watch Asia play, you can see how she dominates the game. Like, she's an incredible player. I don't think that I have to beat that point into your heads. You guys get it. If you watch Asia play, she's a great basketball player. Is she a better player overall right now than Caitlin Clark and Nafisa Coley?
In fact, Clark is ahead in three-pointers made, demonstrating her lethal shooting ability. Sabrina Ionescu, another MVP contender, has had a strong season, but her overall impact on her team doesn't seem to match Clark's ability to completely transform a franchise. Being a rookie and jumping into the MVP race, that doesn't happen that much in the world of sports. It happened once or twice in the WNBA, but we're talking about legendary players here. Is Caitlin racing legend status so early? A lot of people seem to think so. Rachel Demita is one of those people. She thinks Clark's value for their team is off the charts, rookie or not. Look, we've seen this before with players like Candace Parker back in 2008. Parker had an amazing rookie season, sure, but Clark is outperforming her in some key areas.
Video where I talked about Candace Parker winning Rookie of the Year and WNBA MVP in her first season in the WNBA, and we talked about, can Caitlin Clark do it? What does she have to do? So if we look at Candace Parker's stat line for the 2008 season, she averaged 18.5 points per game. Caitlin is currently averaging more points than that. Candace has more rebounds by a solid amount, but look at these other stats. Caitlin is averaging more assists, more steals, more three-pointers per game, and a higher free throw percentage. Also, Candace Parker is not a point guard, she's a 4. So they're different positions. Caitlin is right there, if not putting up better numbers than Candace did during her.
Do you need assists, blocks, and steals? Clark's putting up better numbers than Parker did in her first year. So why isn't she getting the same MVP attention? It's like the WNBA has some unspoken rule that rookies can't be in MVP conversation, no matter how good they are. Rachel's saying that's nonsense, and she's got a point. Clark's not just helping the Fever win games, she's literally carrying the team on her back.
We talk about most valuable player. I think it is also fair to note that the Aces have a stacked roster. There are 4 women on that team who were on Team USA. The Minnesota Lynx, not as much, and the Fever had 0 players that played for Team USA and were also the worst team in the WNBA last season. And while after the Olympic break, Caitlin Clark is putting up insane numbers, she's averaging over 25 points since the Olympic break, she has not only become a better player, but she has made her teammates substantially better, and they are.
If that's not MVP material, what is? It shouldn't matter if you've been in the league for 10 years or 10 minutes. If you're playing at an MVP level, you deserve to be in the running. And right now, Clark's doing just that. Rachel Demita isn't holding back when it comes to the WNBA's MVP selection process. She's made it pretty clear that something's off. According to her, the MVP award has started to feel like it's reserved for certain names for established stars who've already made their mark. And that's the problem, isn't it? The whole thing feels biased, like the WNBA is afraid to shake things up and put someone new like Clark on the list.
The MVP award is subjective. It's very hard to just go by numbers and hand out this award. We saw it this season with the NBA MVP award when the Joker won it again 3 years in a row, and Shaq came out and said, I respect your game, however, I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander should.
Demita's argument goes deeper than just stats. Sure, numbers matter, but she's talking about the bigger picture. Is the MVP supposed to be just about team success? Or is it about the individual's impact? Clark is turning a struggling team around, and Rachel thinks that kind of contribution should count for more. Why should players like A'ja Wilson get all the shine when Clark's making just as much of a difference? And it's not just the WNBA, right? Rachel points out that this kind of thing happens everywhere, even in the NBA. Just look at the debates over Jokic MVP wins.
He deserved it.
And even if you look at the comparison for those 3 players, where it was Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Luka, and the Joker, Nikola Jokic's stats weren't ahead of Shai's or Luka's. If you looked at it, then Luka should have been awarded MVP. But OKC got the #1 seed when they weren't expecting to. Like, there are so many variables that go into it. Or there's the season that Russell Westbrook won MVP, and he clearly won MVP because he had an absurd amount of triple doubles and his stats were just incredible. Yet I don't don't know if his team even made it out of the first round. So there are so many different ways that you can interpret this MVP award. That's why when I hear media and WNBA analysts saying like, it's unanimous, it's A'ja, if you think any other way, you're just absolutely wrong. Like, I don't think that's actually fair to say, because I think that there's a case to be made for Caitlin, and there's also a case to be made for Napheesa, and there might also be a case to be made for Stewie, simply because the Liberty have been so dominant.
Always about more than just stats. But Demita is saying the WNBA needs to be more transparent. Why not recognize someone like Clark, who's doing the impossible with a team that was in the gutter last season? In Rachel's eyes, the MVP race shouldn't just be about who's on top of the standings. It should be about who's truly valuable to their team, and Caitlin Clark is as valuable as they come.
On Caitlin, which makes her super valuable, is she is leading the WNBA in points generated, which means points scored and or points assisted on. She is leading the league by a significant margin, and she is doing this as a rookie with a Fever team that is not comprised of a...
Clark's ability to pull in new fans, especially young ones, is something the league needs right now. The WNBA has been fighting for more visibility, and here comes Clark making sure everyone's watching.
2016. 2 years ago, their home attendance was 1,800 fans. Their average this year, home attendance, is 17,000. That's almost 10 times.
She's not just a player anymore. She's a symbol of what's possible in women's basketball. Rachel has pointed out how Clark's performances get people talking, tweeting, and tuning in like never before. But this MVP snub is sending the wrong message. If the WNBA keeps ignoring talent, like Clark, what does that say to the next generation of players? Rachel's saying what many people think the league needs to recognize young stars like Clark before it loses its chance to grow.
The biggest thing for me is her not even responding to all the that's going on. And I think that's commendable. I think she's a unicorn. She's doing everything I thought she was going to do and more, like win the MVP.
You think Caitlin
That's
Clark?
not going to happen this year, but it could happen very soon.
It's great for the conversation.
Y'all all went to the Olympics and now y'all losing now. Y'all burnt out? Y'all should have let this young girl go over there and play.
I just don't
But
think
then she
there's a
would've been burnt out.
correlation.
Nah, but she would, because she's a rookie. You let these young play. Caitlin Clark is a superhero. Now, they not listening, though.
I hear you.
They don't be listening. They watching this in real time. We watching greatness in real time. Just like they be saying about Brian, oh, you just appreciate Brian. We watching it in real time. We're watching Caitlin in real time. What the is so hard to appreciate? You ain't never seen nothing like this. It's Steph Curry and Steve Nash mixed together. They're doing crazy.
Hell yeah.
What?
If you don't celebrate your best players, you risk stalling the momentum. Clark's more than just a rookie sensation. She's shaping the future of the WNBA. So yeah, it's about time the league gives her the recognition she's earned, both on the court and off. Rachel's been saying it all along. Caitlin's contributions go way beyond her points per game stat. She's changing the landscape of the sport, and that's something you just can't overlook.
And so that's why maybe the MVP category is just about how you think about it. Do you think about it as the single best, most skilled player in the league? Wilson, give her the crown. That is absolutely hers. Or is it the most valuable and most impactful to the team? And maybe this is a friendly debate that we'll probably be having until the end of time. It happens in the NBA all the time. It's great that it's happening here. But I do think that we got to give Caitlin Clark more respect, because at this point, the goalpost keeps getting moved. And if they continue to play like they're playing, the Fever are going to make a run in the playoffs. And that might sound crazy for me to say, but this team is starting.
The Indiana Fever and WNBA should be celebrating Clark. The world of basketball as a whole should too. There's no reason she should be punished for her popularity. If the league knew what it was doing, they would give her at least a top 10 nod. What do you think? Should Caitlin be in the MVP race, or is she too experienced for it? Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comment section below. If you like what you see, subscribe to the channel as well.